Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today at our knowledge forum titled Food Safety Fundamentals for Farmers and Ranchers. Our hosts include Uche Ogba, we got Uriah Israel, and I think Arlena Brumfield will be trailing up shortly. So stay tuned for that. If this is your first time joining us, um, we do give these monthly forums each month, so welcome. And a few quick housekeeping items, especially for those this is your first time joining us. Really to reduce background noise, everyone has actually been muted with the exception of the panelists. Um, Now, we do encourage you to use the chat feature all the way through. If you just want to, have conversations or comment on something that's being presented, feel free to do so. We will be opening things up for our audience to have questions towards the end of the presentation. And also, we'll prompt you to also raise your hand if you don't want to put something in the Q&A section. But we do encourage you during the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A session to kind of tee up a few of the questions that are coming through. Really in respect for your time and your family time, we'll keep this to no more than 90 minutes. If we get done sooner, then great. And last but certainly not least, this knowledge form is being recorded and will be dispersed to everyone within a few days of us ending this event. So before I get too deep in the weeds on our main presentation and introducing our special guest, I want to hand it over to you, Uche, to do any icebreakers that you may have for our audience.
All right. Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you for the introduction. Hi, Raya. I am so excited to have you all here. And as always, as you know, in our knowledge forums, we always love to learn who our people are, where you're joining us from, what you do, and how we can contribute to what you're doing as well. So these icebreakers are just a way to do that. It's going to be three very short questions, and we'd love for you all to respond to them as you can. So I just launched it, as you can see on your own end to our attendees. So, of course, the first question is where are you joining us from? Please respond. The second one is what do you produce or hope to produce on your farm slash ranch or garden? Doesn't matter. Let us know what you like to produce. And third, what type of livestock do you raise or hope to raise on your farm slash ranch? That's if you choose to. Please respond. We have some people already that are here, so feel free to respond within the poll slash quiz. I know we have people. I have no responses. I'm a little worried now. Come on, y'all. We'd love for a few responses. There we go. We have some coming in already. Come on, y'all. Respond. Let us know, like where you're joining us from. What do you produce or hope to produce on your farm slash ranch? And what type of livestock do you raise or hope to raise on your farm slash ranch? I think it's really pivotal for you to share what those are because that will help us guide. It will help us know, like, okay, for each knowledge forum, this is how we want to present to our audience. A lot of them probably are looking for livestock to sell livestock because today we're talking about what food safety, right? You all saw the flyer, so we're talking about food safety. So, what type of, what do you need to account for your type of livestock? How should you make sure that livestock is kept safe so that consumers like me and Phil and Uriah and all your, consumers can get to enjoy? Also, food. I mean, didn't we just have like an outbreak of onions from McDonald's recently. You know, so that's so important for food safety, even when it comes to vegetables. Something as simple as onions can cause that much harm in our community. So it's really important, and I think this is one of those pivotal conversations that we all need to be a part of. So I have 5 respondents already. I see 7 of y'all in attendee list. If you all can respond, that would be amazing so that we can have a clear goal of what we're doing. I'm going to give everyone about 20 more seconds, and then we're going to end the poll, and we're going to see where people are in our answers and kind of like gauge where that is. All right? We got one more person. You know, we got 20 more seconds now. Come on, come through. I know it's taking time. 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Let's see. So let's see view this details. Let's see what's it talking about. Oh, don't ask me to log in. That's not fair. That is not fair. That is not fair. Okay, let's see if I can open up a different way. Let's share results. All right, so far I can see a few people participate, 6 participants, all in all through the entirety of it. And it's telling me to log in, which is unfortunate. I don't know why it's doing this to me right now, but this is the wrong one today. So sorry, y'all. I am way more organized than today.
Oh yeah, no worries. We'll have them put it in the chat. What are the 3 questions? Because I see the the poll is malfunctioning.
Oh, the poll is malfunctioning now?
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh no. The 3 questions are: where are you joining us from? What do you produce or hope to produce on your farm/ranch? And what type of livestock do you raise or hope to raise on your farm/ranch? Now, I do believe, let's make sure everyone, so everyone should be able to type it on the chat as well. If you can, if you want, you can share your thoughts in the chat as well. If you are not able to respond, that would be great as well.
Yes, indeed. Technology, bro.
I know.
Had to bail you out, man.
It's open now. It's open.
Is it?
There we go. All right, we have one guest from Eustis, Texas. All right, Eustis. I've never been to Eustis. Lancaster, Texas. Dallas. What's up, Big D? Palestine, Texas. All right, Anthony, Texas, and Dallas, Texas. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. We have some folks. What do you produce on your farm/ranch? Guests, pigs, but adding in probably weirdly dirt and veggies, fruits, and plants. Awesome. That's great. Another guest, vegetable, fruit, and medicinal plants. Amazing. Another guest, veggies and herbs. Amazing. Another guest, boniato potatoes. Ooh, have I had that before? Boniato potatoes? I've had Rossetto, I've red potatoes, but not boniato. But I'd like to have some at some point. We have another guest, mixed vegetables. Also, we provide beginning farmer training. All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. Another guest, peppers. I love me a good pepper. If you can find me a good hot pepper, because habaneros don't do for me. You know, I like me a good, much stronger ghost pepper, preferably for me. Livestock. All right. First guest, pigs. Second guest, goats and chickens. Another guest, none. Maybe we can get some livestock in your farm or garden or wherever. Another guest, cattle. We love some good beef. Another guest, chicken. And another guest, not applicable. That's all right. That's all right. We enjoy each and every one of y'all for being here. And we have another guest just put in the chat, watermelon. Oh, I mean, that's great. Watermelon is always good in my book for sure. And also natural watermelon because, you know, you find them seedless watermelons. I don't know what they do or put in those at all. But yeah, great. Oh, another guest just joined us. Said rabbits are excellent additions to gardeners. Yes, they are. I feel can attest. We had a knowledge forum a few months back, actually, where it was all about rabbits. And we had a gentleman, and he talked and talked and talked and talked about how rabbits can assist you throughout your farming process. And he only had what he said he had just in his backyard, right? His backyard, and he had rabbits, he had small chickens, he had everything, and they were adding to his soil in the process. So yes, Heathen Hog Farm rabbits are amazing for your farm. Well, that's it for our poll. Thank y'all so much for participating. Now, remember, if you have any questions throughout this conversation, feel free to jump on the chat, ask questions there. You can also ask questions through our Q&A. Thank you all so much for joining us. Phil?
All right, we'll get to the main event here. Now, which is food safety, which is sometimes when it comes to us growers and producers, it's right up there with food safety is right up there with risk management and farm insurance. Not the sexiest of topics on the surface. However, it should be. I'm learning. About to introduce our special guest. I had the opportunity to be introduced to her maybe 5, 6 months ago. She's really been holding my hand as a farmer rancher, learning the importance of food safety and how that plays a key role in monetizing your farm, especially on not only the wholesale side, but I'm seeing more and more of it when it comes to things such as farmers markets, CSAs, and so really hope number one, kudos to those of you who are here. My hope is that you really lean in because sometimes the thing that's not the sexiest topic is the difference between being able to monetize and make money at farming and ranching. So with that said, I'm going to introduce our special guest here, who is a Texan, Terry Simmons. Now, Terry brings over 40 years of experience in the restaurant management, food safety training, auditing, internal auditing, and the food supply chain as far as her expertise. She currently is a quality assurance manager for Compass Group North America. Terry also works with suppliers, conducting on-site assessments, and her passion for supporting small farmers in their food safety education to me is pretty much second to none. She's actually shown that to me. So I've also heard some whispers, and Terry, you can share this if this is true or not, or if the cat shouldn't be out of the bag yet, but that Terry actually has been selected to head up a few different key coalitions to help USDA ramp up food safety initiatives nationally. So, again, not sure if I heard that right, but I'll let you hit on that. But Terry, the floor is yours. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Phil. And you and I were in a loud room when I told you that, but you're spot on. Thank you very much for having me this evening. I do have a passion for produce and just the food industry in general, and I'm so excited that I'm able to share with y'all this evening. And Phil and I were connected through our company, and we've been having some pretty good conversations over the last 5 or 6 months. Please excuse my pups. Well, as Phil said, I've been in the industry for 40 plus years, and I've worked in all aspects. But when I landed in produce, I was so excited because I was able to utilize the knowledge that I've gained over the years in food safety and kind of get back to my roots and apply it to the produce industry and small farms. So if you don't mind, Boucher, if you could share my slides, we could get started on that. So, as Phil pointed out, I am with the Compass Group, and a lot of people don't really know that much about Compass Group. But if you have, eaten in a college quad or a hospital, a baseball field, museum, and even, major event centers right here in Texas, chances are you've probably eaten food that we have helped to provide food and services for. Well, back in 2022, we really wanted to tap into and utilize more the partnerships that we had to help benefit small, local, diverse suppliers. And the best way for us to do that as a company is to, number one, use our knowledge, use our backgrounds. We have microbiologists, we have nutritionalists, we have, I mean, a whole gambit of food safety people, you know, that we help guide our suppliers, and we utilize that in supplier risk. So we decided that, you know, we've got our core values, and part of our core values is sustainability and diversity. Well, what better place to use that than to use it in, you know, with small farmers, and help to support in knowledge and education, also the small ranchers. So we, you know, in doing that, I've had to kind of broaden the scope of my knowledge as well. And like, for example, going through the Produce Safety Alliance to take that grower training that's out there. And that is some key, you know, key information to have when you are, you know, a small farmer that wants to grow their market. And then, you know, I just had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to go out to North Carolina, and I went to North Carolina State's research farm, and they walked me through some tools that they use to help support small farmers in North Carolina. So in doing that, we decided that we were going to give that support. We were going to use our knowledge and training, to help develop food safety, basically farm to fork. You know, it starts pre-dirt. You know, some of you have your own seedlings and you sprout your seedlings before you plant them in the dirt. So it starts there. Then, you know, by helping to support in these programs, we can help you as a farmer and, you know, a rancher, if we can get you to where you need to be to expand that market you have. You know, nobody wants to lose, you know, basically where they started. They don't want to lose their grassroots. You can still go to those farmer markets. You know, you can still spread your product through your community. But, you know, I think, Phil, your farm is multi-generational. So if you want to have that longevity, at some point, you got to grow your market. So why not reach out to those state extensions and to companies like, you know, Compass, and utilize their knowledge to help you grow your market? And that's what we wanted to do. You know, and once we help support in getting you to, you know, up to speed in your food safety, then we'll commit to possibly purchasing your product once it's gone through that program into the units that we have and the systems we have. You know, we have an amazing my goodness, you probably couldn't go, just in the state of Texas alone, you can't go more than 15 miles before there is a Compass supported unit that's cooking food and feeding people. You know, so it's a good way to get your market out there. Okay, next slide, please, sir. So again, you know, just touching on, we got food safety on a farm, and you've really got to, if you want to grow, you've got to learn more about risk assessments. You've got to devise some policies. You've got to make sure you're following good agricultural practices. Now, touching on risk assessments, You're going to evaluate your potential food safety hazards, across your farm. That's going to include your water. If you have people that help support you, a support staff, educating them, what are you doing with your waste? Waste could be those vegetables that hit the ground. We can't use ground product because of potential contamination. But if you have animals that you're sourcing your manure from, those vegetables can go in that manure pile as long as you're following the treatment. If you're using it as a soil amendment later on down the road, and you're allowing that manure to hit a certain temperature, I think it's 131 degrees, for a minimum of 3 days, you can toll that back into, your land. So you've got to have that information to make sure that you're controlling even your waste. Looking out for wildlife. Wildlife being domestic and true to form wildlife. That you're not having rabbits invading your growing space, that if you have livestock as well, what's your plan? Livestock gets out. You can't prevent cows from breaking out, or goats or chickens. You just can't prevent it. It's going to happen at some point. Do you know how to handle that area that they've invaded? Do you know about a 25-foot buffer zone? So helping to walk through the education and helping giving you to give you resources, people to talk to, things to read. And then, when you create those policies, some small farms actually have a community pick program where, say you've got somebody growing field peas or crowder peas and they've got a bumper crop, they may open that up to the community and say, hey, you can come pick a whole bushel and we'll give you a discount rate. And, that's great, but you still have to have policies in place for a community pick. They're considered visitors. And when you have visitors come onto your farm, you need to have a plan in place to educate them to what your required standards are so that you're not cross-contaminating from their feet, because in their hands and whatever health and hygiene issues they may have. Now, I got the benefit, and I'm rolling into, we talked about the Produce Safety Alliance grower training, and that you can find that online. And I'm going to be honest with you. If you find it online, it's too expensive. Find an in-person class. It may, take you 2 days to go through that class, but I guarantee you that it's going to be less expensive. You're going to get more out of it than spending $450 to do it online. That's, I wouldn't do that. So the class is a huge benefit, though, because it truly explains all of the codes that you need to have. And I'm looking from a little book. Title 21 CFR Part 112 in the Food Code covers all of what needs to be done post-plant all the way to after harvest. And it has every code in there. And I was very happy to see that it's an easy read when I started delving into it. And, the most updated one even covers the changes that they had in agricultural water. That is, like I said, if you can go in person, it's a great class. It's a class, as a matter of fact, that if you are covered under the FSMA rule, produce safety rule, your farm, if your farm is if you're growing covered crops that fall under FDA. Okay, a covered crop could be green beans, it could be corn, it could be potatoes, tomatoes. Your whole farm, you could have 2 or 3 acres and grow all of that product. There's a financial piece to that for you to fall within being approved, through regulations to sale. And on a 3-year average, the goal is that you have, I always tell people, $31,600 on average in sale. You can do that on 1 acre of land. You can do it on 2, 3. And that includes, your sale includes what you sell at a farmer's market. Some of you sell at a farmer's market now, and you want to make sure that you are keeping records for that. Now, if all you ever want to do is sell at a farmer's market, that's great. You still have to have one person that takes the Produce Safety Alliance grower training. That falls under the FSMA produce safety rule. And that way, if anybody from the state ever comes to your farm and knocks on your door and asks if anybody went through that training, you're ready. Another benefit of going through that program is you also get can request what is called an on-farm readiness review. And that's the state coming out and walking your farm and having a conversation with you and letting you know if you're ready to move your market up, and if you're ready for state ag to come out and do an actual full inspection for you, to make you, basically it's legitimizing what you're doing. It's saying that you have good food safety practices, good agricultural practices, and you should use that. It's free. Nobody will charge you for that on-farm readiness review. And I actually just went to North Carolina State, their research farm, and they took me through that entire process. And it truly is a conversation. It's not anybody come to tell you right off the bat if you have opportunities. They're looking to see if you have everything lined out, and it's a wonderful program. And they treated me through that process like that was my farm, and they spoke to me the same way that they would speak to anybody. And it's a huge benefit, and it really gets you ready to have somebody see what you're doing well, and it gives you the opportunity to have somebody that has a good skill set to tell you, hey, this here, for example, this is something. They actually set up a scenario for me in their tomato field. So we get out in the tomato field, and they had set up this little scenario to see if I was going to recognize that it was an issue. So there were some crates at the end of a road. There was 2 crates. They were directly on the ground. And in between those crates, there was a paring knife, and it was stuck in the dirt. And I noticed it right off the bat, and I said, hey, I don't know who did this, but we need to make sure those crates are not directly on the ground, and nobody should ever stick their work knife down in the dirt. And they said, okay, this is what we think you should try. And they coach you and give you information to fix an opportunity that you may have in your field. And then if you could move to the next slide for me, please. Just to touch on some things we've already talked about, some things that you want to think about when you're walking your farm. Where are you at, in standard? So one of the things I did, Phil and I had been talking about his farm, and I said, hey, have you ever, just got the gap assessment and just read through that? There's a checklist, and just look at it as a yes or no. Be honest with yourself. You're either doing it or you're not. So take a checklist and you just be honest with yourself and walk your farm. First question, what steps do you take to prevent livestock, or second, third, and wild animals from getting in your field? Ask yourself, do I have a plan in place? And it's actually on that checklist. And you're going to be honest with yourself if you say no, and you're going to check it no. You're going to be surprised. By the time you go through that checklist, you're going to see more yes than you do no. And you're going to, it's going to make you feel good. You're going to feel proud about what you're doing. And then you're going to start at the top of the no's. And you're going to handle them one by one, and you continue to do that until you feel like you're ready to have somebody come out and do that free on-farm readiness review. And then once you go through that, they're going to validate how well you're doing things. And then you're going to feel good about saying, you know what, I think I'm going to fill that application out and have state ag come out and check me out. And that's how you're going to, number one, have the confidence in your food safety knowledge. Number two, grow your market. And number three, you're going to be able to sleep at night because you're doing the right thing and you're not making anybody sick. Can you imagine, Uche mentioned the onions. Can you imagine how that farmer is feeling right now about the onion incident with McDonald's? It's a pretty tense situation because I've been on the phone and on, sending emails and digging information since last Thursday when it hit the airways, trying to track down what's going on. I just had a phone call this afternoon with Taylor Farms to try to get, see where we're at. What's the updates? Whoever grew, we'll just say, okay, let's say it's the onions, okay? Because right now it's inconclusive. They don't know yet. The CDC and the FDA they have not put information out on that yet. But let's just say it is the onions. So far, 2 people have died. So, how do you think those growers are feeling about that? And they don't even know if it's them or not. So, making sure that you're doing the right thing, food safety wise, I'll tell you, the return on investment on that is your peace of mind and your name. Everybody on this call has either a farm or a ranch, and you have your name on that. So to do whatever it takes to increase your knowledge for your farm or your ranch and food safety practices protects your name, because nothing will tear a name apart more or quicker than food safety issues from your product. But so I have told P-Way and I, again, we've had so many conversations that, we'll just catch up ever so often and we'll throw it. Honestly, we try to have a 30-minute call and it'll go to an hour. Probably most of that is my fault because I love what we do. And I'll say, hey, he'll bring something to me and, I start thinking about all the different ways that we can get this done and get it done the right way. There is never too much information when it comes to food safety. There are never silly questions. Are we going to have opportunities in this? Yes, we are. But can we learn from it and figure out a better way to do it and a safer way to do it? Yes, we can. So, any of you have questions, concerns, you send it to P-Way, and I know he's going to call me, or send me an email if it's something that he may or may not know. He knows a lot more than he gives himself credit for. That's for sure. But I thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate everything you do. And believe me, from a small kid working on the family farm, also cropping when I was a teenager with 2 other families, going to my uncle's his pig ranch. Nobody knows how to do what you do until they've walked a mile in your shoes, and on top of that, tied your shoelaces too. So I appreciate everything you do. I know it's hard, and I am always here to help if you ever need anything. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And for those of you who thought this was actual food safety training, we're going to get there. This is just kind of a high level opportunity to hear the what and the why, because most of us are new to food safety and what it is. We're going to go into a Q&A, so feel free and use the Q&A box or raise your hand. I'm going to start off the question, Terry, because a few people got on a little bit late.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to us like we're 4-year-olds and kind of tell us the what and the why behind food safety, just in a kind of a short 1-2, this is what it is.
Yeah. Well, food safety is preventing really microbial contamination. And that's your E. coli's and your listerias and your salmonellas, which, people don't realize that can transfer. It's not just from animals. It can transfer from us. It also can transfer from harvest equipment. If you're not cleaning your harvest equipment properly, once a microorganism, is introduced to whether it be plant life or it could be manure, it could are transferred from your hands to an animal. It only takes one microorganism, if all conditions are right, to increase to 60,000 microorganisms. They can do that within 20 minutes. So the whole point of food safety in, the farm industry, whether it be vegetables or animals, is to prevent microorganisms from attacking basically our foods.
Yes, I can go next with the question. So I guess I know you really touched a high level on a number of things. So could you share some, like, I guess, common myths people might have encountered in farming that are regarding food safety, and how those have persisted? Can you touch on some of those common myths that are not real, and maybe you can debunk some of them as well?
So a common event on a farm, is that what you
Yes.
asked? Okay. Sure. And I can, from experience, I can touch on this. So I went to Humboldt County in California 2 years ago to check out basically a hub that's much like, I think, is one of the goals, for your organization. The North Coast Growers Association provided funding in Humboldt County for a mini warehouse with cold storage. Well, I went there to check that out to make sure that, if we ran produce through there, that it would be okay. While I was there, I had the opportunity and the privilege to go meet some of the local farmers. And there's this one gentleman, and he grows a lot of potatoes, a lot of Yukon potatoes. And I got there, and they had this wood-based wagon that honestly was 100 years old, still had the original wood on it, and he was using that to wash the dirt off his potatoes. And that's a porous, wood's porous. There could have been anything on that wood that could have transferred to that potato. So that's common on small farms, because what do? You work with what you have, and if the wagon had, say, a thick plastic top, cover on it, much like a cutting board that's easily cleanable, that's fine. If that's what you got, that's fine. But it's very common to see on small farms that equipment is being used improperly, and it's just simply because they don't know any better. Until you know better, you do better, right?
Right.
So that's a common thing.
Thank you.
Terry, this is amazing information, and thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I just want to know, like, most of the farmers on this call are small farmers. How can we, with limited resources, establish effective food safety without breaking the bank?
That's an excellent question, because honestly, it doesn't take a whole lot of money for good food safety practices. Okay. And I'm not a component of that to begin with. For anybody to tell you that you've got to go out and spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars to be food safe on your farm, they don't know what they're talking about. Are there some pieces of equipment that you need to spend good money on to be food safe? Yes, there are. But the return on investment in that comes to you in time. Okay. So a hand washing sink. Okay. Because you got to wash your hands, when you come out of before you go in the field and when you come out, anytime. A hand washing sink, you can go, as long as it's built properly and it's made out of stainless steel and it's got hot and cold water, you can go to Lowe's and buy a small hand washing sink. Nobody's telling you got to go to, a food safety supply house, which there are some out there, and spend $200-300 on that sink. You don't have to do that, as long as it is easily cleanable and it is, you have everything you need at that hand sink, which is soap, paper towels, hot water, and a trash can. As long as you can do that, then it's not gonna break your bank. Can you give me a situation to where a specific item that the assumption is, because to be food safe, that you've got to go spend a lot of money on this item? Anybody out there? Like harvest totes. Let's talk about harvest totes, because that's a big question too. Did you know that a milk crate can be considered a harvest tote, because it's made out of durable plastic and it's easily cleanable, as long as it doesn't have nicks and cracks, and that there's, let's face it, plastic's gonna get a nick in it, and it could possibly get in, we'll say, a potato or a green bean or something. But as long as you have a practice of daily looking at that milk crate can be used as a harvest tote as long as you are cleaning and sanitizing it, because it's durable. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So it seems, Terry, so it seems like you're saying that like when we a big part of the process seems to be sanitizing your tools regularly, washing, like you mentioned, the milk crate. I can see like if you have a regular thing that you do, like as far as sanitizing when you're out there harvesting, you're using particular pruners and knives and things, and then you're just washing down everything with well, that's another part of the question. Like, what would you wash these? What do you use like to wash your milk crate and um, or any container that you're using to harvest with? What would you suggest using? Like just for your family, even it's like a really small operation.
Yeah, if it's a small operation for your family, and every now and then you take food, produce to the farmer's market. The standard for cleaning and sanitizing is when you clean it, you're removing, the bulk of it. You're removing the little rocks and the dirt and the dust and the twigs and things, and you have to wash that. Well, it's perfectly fine for you to wash that in hot soapy water as long as it's like dish soap, you know. And then you got to rinse it, and then you've got to, because it is a food contact surface, um, you've got to sanitize it. Well, there are sanitizers that you can go to a restaurant supply house and you can buy it. You can also, it is acceptable for you to use household bleach as long as you use it properly and you have a way to test it. That falls within parts per million. Okay, you've got to look for that parts per million. And a sanitizer made with bleach and water, you want it to fall within 50 to 100 parts per million. The easiest way to do that is you get a 5-gallon bucket, you fill it up within 1.5 inches to the top of it, and you take that bleach cap and you fill that cap up, and that should be pretty close to about 1.5 tablespoons. And you put that in that 5-gallon bucket, you mix it up and you test it, and you see if it's between 50 and 100 parts per million. If it falls within that range, then you use that solution to sanitize all of your equipment. That's from your pruning knives, your totes, any tables that if you happen to wash on, preferably a metal table, you want to sanitize that. So again, you're looking at Dawn dishwashing liquid or a dish soap, and you're looking at bleach. You can either buy that at a hotel, restaurant, supply house, or you can buy that from Amazon. You don't have to go and buy an Ecolab product. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You gave some really good examples on everyday handling, food safety. So I was going to ask you about everyday handling, but I wanted you to kind of pinpoint. Well, the question is, do you feel cross-contamination and the food handlers have been most of the issues causing these outbreaks here lately? Or is it just direct microbial infections that they just happen to overlook?
It's, to be honest with you, is if we as an industry could pinpoint that one thing, we wouldn't have the issues anymore. It's coming from all directions. And to a certain extent, there are still things out there that they have not been able to find the answer to. Like in 2018, we had the massive recall on romaine. and that was around Thanksgiving, I believe. And that was a nightmare day. It was, yeah, it was the week before Thanksgiving, because generally people have salad at Thanksgiving, you know. And do you know that to this day they still have not pinpointed what caused that outbreak? The FDA did study after study, and Taylor Farms was actually in one of their most recent studies, because they do a lot of work for food safety. They try to get on, they get out there and they get as much information as they can. And one of the most recent studies last year was, they were testing farm equipment and trying to find out if that farm equipment is actually the way that microbes are being spread. And what they did is they went out. FDA came out. They had 2 visits that they told them they were coming, and then there was 2 visits that they didn't tell them. So they would get there early in the morning and they would take swabs of all this equipment. They took a total of 64 swabs on one tractor, and they ran testing. And some companies did a fantastic job cleaning their equipment and they got nothing. And one company, they had a small amount of, I believe it was listeria, but it wasn't enough that it would have spread throughout that field. So one aspect, you could take your equipment and you could clean that equipment great and do an awesome job, but yet you could have a food safety outbreak. Say you have E. coli because one of your workers, went a week before and had tacos down the road, and they got E. coli and didn't even know it. They just thought they had a stomach bug. And we let them come and harvest, and we haven't reiterated how to properly wash your hands after you go to the bathroom, and then they go back out and they're picking they're harvesting your food, and that's how we get E. coli in there.
Yeah.
Or it could be your farm animal. You could have a farm animal that's, for whatever reason they're not healthy, and you get 5 or 6 cows that breaks out and they go into your growing field and they're eating. Well, what do they do when they eat? They got to go poop, and not having, if you've got a crew member, say you're not on your farm that day, and your farm manager has got to take care of that daily walkthrough, and he's not educated enough to put a buffer zone of 25 feet around that, but yet it's your harvest day. So yeah, it's the key factor in that is you've got to have that education in place. That's the only way I think that we are really going to fight foodborne diseases, is educating. And it's cheap. Look, I am a self-educated woman. I have grown in this industry. I did not go to college, but every free opportunity I had to educate myself and become certified and credentialed, I have done it. I am a credentialed, certified professional food safety auditor, and I use that everywhere I go. So there's so much free information out there that can help you, and you need to take it and utilize it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And there's one of these faces on the screen will be our internal auditor to start with, but I'm not going to say any words there. We'll figure out who that is. But so we got that in play. I know we don't have a ton of questions, and the reason for that is I kind of put I wanted you to do a high level before we actually got into food safe. So a lot of us, like I said, many of us farmers don't know what we don't know. So that's why you're not seeing a lot of questions. But I do want to ask one without you going into a whole new webinar. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But are there some key? You mentioned farm animals, hand washing. Can you give us some key areas that you see, especially from farmers, small farmers, that we need to be aware of going into our food safety? What are some of those areas that you're seeing some common contamination or oversight? I know you and I talked about, people from off farm coming on your farms. We talked about pets. So I won't give too much more of that. I want to hear from you, the expert. What are some of those most common things that you're seeing? And don't worry about missing anything. I just kind of want to hear some of the most common ones.
Yeah. And you the first thing you said pretty much touched on what is the most common, and it's places to wash your hands and go to the bathroom. Where do I need it? How far from my field do I need it? Do I need one separate, for if I have field hands, do I need one separate for them? Well, you do. Your facilities should not be more than 100 feet from your growing field. And it does need to be your hand sink fully stocked, and then a place for people to go to the restroom. Now, does that mean that you got to go build a facility? No. Can you afford to either buy or rent a porta potty that has a hand sink? That would help. What if you do have that? Where do you dispose of that waste? That 100 feet away helps create the buffer. If you have a buffer and you are using a porta potty, you got a buffer there, so that way, if somebody is coming to get rid of that waste for you, if they spill it, you've got a buffer to prevent it from going into your growing field. But key thing, you got to have somewhere for somebody to wash their hands and go to the bathroom. Okay. I do see issues with that a fair amount. Then let's see, not having a policy set for those people that, are off farm coming in. You don't know where their feet have been. They're coming in on your farm and they've got all these muddy boots on, whether it be wet or dry mud. You don't know where that came from. They're bringing in all kinds of stuff from their environment. You want to keep your environment as clean as possible, and you can do that by setting policies for your visitors, whether it be, you could be giving your waste to a pig farmer down the road, which is fine. You can do that. But when he comes up and picks up those barrels, he needs to have proper footwear that's clean so that he's not contaminating your fields. So I've seen that before. Standing water, okay, surface water. So having the knowledge to know that if in your field, if say you get, say a storm comes through and it's rained so much that you have standing water that has not dried up and dissipated within 3 to 7 days, you got an issue. You should never have standing water, surface water, in your field for more than 3 to 7 days, because that water becomes stagnant. Not to mention it has picked up everything that's floating in the air, and it's just standing there in your field. Thinking about the fact that you have a ranch, let's say less than 2 miles from your house. Now their topography may be below you, you know, there may be good runoff, but when it storms and the wind's blowing, it's blowing all over the place. That was another test that was done, and it's not, that test was not inclusive. Inconclusive. It proved that a farm that was actually over 5 miles away that had a ranch that had cattle, they had a storm come through and they came through and they did swabs on romaine. And there were traces of E. coli because everything has E. coli in it. It has to hit a certain level. There were traces of E. coli on those romaine leaves after that storm, and it came from that ranch, that cattle ranch, you know, that was 5 miles away. So having that visitor policy is key. During harvest time, if you're using 5-gallon buckets to, this is something I see a lot, and it's okay if you use a 5-gallon bucket to harvest, but don't put it on the ground. You've got to teach your, you know, your team, don't put that on the ground. People say, well, what am I supposed to do? You take a second 5-gallon bucket, you put that first one down in it, and you can put it on the ground because that second one is not going to touch anything but the dirt. Does that make sense? You know, that way you don't have to worry about the dirt when you take that full bucket. Say you're harvesting, we'll say green beans, you're harvesting it into 5-gallon buckets. Well, naturally, if you don't have a surface for that bucket to sit on, when you get that bucket full, you're going to grab it by the handle and you get to wherever you're dumping the bulk of it. You're going to hold that bucket by the bottom and you're going to pour it. And then we're going to go back down the next row and we're going to start picking. So if you put that top bucket on the inside of another one, when you pick it up, it's going to be heavy enough it releases and the bottom's clean and you can pour it in and then you put it back in the second. And it could be a 5-gallon bucket. It could be okay, what about the plastic watering tray under the bucket? If the watering tray is clean and it is dry, that's an awesome idea. Key thing, figuring out a way not to contaminate the outside of that bucket so that your hands touch it and then your hands eventually touch, you know, your produce. I see that a lot on small farms. And it's just because they just don't know any better. They don't think about it. You can get creative as long as the surface that bucket touches is easily cleanable and sanitized. You can get creative.
I wanted to point out that we're talking about practices on the farm, small, large, food safety practices. But if someone else is on here and you may actually participate in food distribution, and food pantries, and if you're having fresh produce and handling of food, maybe even you're feeding large groups, this is still very, very, very important. You are still, the handlers need to be educated. The food that they're touching and it going back into the public, this is still very important. So what Ms. Terry is providing still applies if you're doing food distribution. It extremely applies because when you're taking that harvested food, so let's say myself, the farmer, provides you barrels and pallets of greens and green beans and potatoes, and you take it to your storage space. And the way you store that and handle that from the moment it comes from me, you're still bringing high contamination. So especially if you store other food goods in that storage, the temperature of it, what goes in and out, your hands and every hands that touch it and where you put it plays in a part. So I wanted to make note of that if you're on this panel and you do food distribution, or if you're watching this later, you still need food safety training and someone to generally guide the people that are touching your produce and maintaining it so that you don't get someone sick. That's my little spiel on it. Okay.
Man, you giving away the top potential candidate here. I guess. Come on, now. Come on now. You flexing the muscles there. But
No. You know, I'm really big on education. And Miss Terry, I'm highly invested in food distributions outside of Texas small farmers. We feed hundreds. I have a background in catering. So I always bring that to the table at an event. I don't care if we feeding the homeless, we having a backyard barbecue, if it's the family. I'm always the one that's saying. So I have invited some friends in here and some peers that aren't farmers. And that's the reason I invited you, because I needed you to know that when you were putting that food out, that you want to be safe. But that's we didn't say nothing now. We didn't say nothing now. I gotta be the element of surprise, you know.
I think my lady volunteered herself to be it, Phil. Just FYI.
Hey, no, I'm with. There's nothing worse than going to a barbecue or cookout, and you sit all of a sudden you driving home. You like, oh man,
yeah.
I'm not feeling so good. So now I'm with you, 120%.
So
yeah,
we have a question from one of our attendees, Letitia. She wrote, it's 3 questions, so bear with me and I can repeat them again, Terry, for you. The first question is, what method is least expensive to test the water when adding Clorox? That's the first question.
The least expensive way is to go to a restaurant supply house and ask them for chlorine test strips. Now it comes in a container. Well, it comes 2 ways. You have one that's going to have 100 to 150 strips in it. And then you have one that also is a little roll that's probably about, I'd say 30, maybe 40. That might be too much. 25, I'd say 25 minimum, 25 feet that you just pull a little bit off at a time. And you rip it off because really you only need about 1 inch. Okay. And those may run maybe about $15 a pack. And the thing is you don't want to overuse it. You want to keep them dry. Do you have to test it every day? Yes. Anytime you make a sanitizer, you have to test it every day. Okay. So that would be the least expensive way to do it. And the reason I'm saying that is this. If you have a local regulatory that comes to your farm, your catering business, your farmer's market where you're setting up things and you're responsible for sanitation, one of the first things they're going to do is ask you, can I use your test strips? And the reason they do that is to make sure that you have them, because you have to have them. Okay.
She has a second question. Is purchasing a microscope to sample crops and food a worthwhile investment?
I would say if you are a microbiologist and you have a degree in it and you've decided to start farming, yes, it's worthwhile. But if you don't have that background, I would not spend the money. Okay. Because think about it. What are you looking for? What are you testing for? You honestly cannot, if you had a microscope and you kind of knew what you were looking for, there is a degree or a percentage of that sample that's going to tell you whether it's positive for contamination or not positive for contamination. There's a percentage on that. And unless you know the percentage, then you're to spend the money on a setup of microscope would just be, it would honestly be a waste.
Yeah, to answer that another way, that the education piece, that is where you first spend that money, and through that education, you're probably going to be spending money on a microscope anyway to get the proper training to really understand what you're looking at.
Yeah, yeah.
And she has a
But there
third.
are some places you can send it. I
Yeah.
recommend sending it to your local university. They will absolutely love to create those slides for you and assess it. But there are some testing sites. But I know
Absolutely.
a bunch of biology nerds and microbiology that would love to make some slides and look at that for you.
Yes.
For free.
For class, for free. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't wrong with anything free. If it's free and it's going to help you in what you're doing, take it.
Yes.
Okay, and her last question?
She says, any suggestions on preventing the cow from pooping in the water trough?
Well, you know, I tell you what, baby, if you can figure that out and you share it, you're going to be a rich woman, because cattle are going to go where they're going to go. I wish I could give you something, better than that. Outside of, there are some watering systems that have been known to work with animals, where they have to learn basically to use their nose to push this little rod that's coming out, and it releases the water. Okay. So that means the water's not standing. Okay. So if they happen to go to the bathroom in that area, it's not so much a big deal. But that is I can tell you that's a financial investment to buy a system like that. But in a trough, it's just going to happen.
Well, I mean, that's might be the $1 million question for whoever invents that, or the $1 billion question, I guess, where if they can solve that solution.
I'll drive you to the patent office.
So I see we have two more attendees who have questions. I'll go by first come, first serve. So Trisha Ray has her hand up. Trisha, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I really didn't have a question. I was just saying, like at the farmer's market, can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. At the farmer's market, what I use for my hand washing station and to sanitize my dishes that I use when I'm preparing some things, my drinks live. I have a shoebox system, and I have like a little shelf system, and I have a igloo cooler, a 5-gallon igloo cooler that I have with hot water already in it, and it keeps it hot and warm enough. And then if it does get cool, I use this heating probe, like a ignite light, like rod type thing. It's a heating probe, and I just plug it into maybe a generator or something, and it heats the water back up to standard. And then the knob that I have, and lift it up so the water will pour freely, so you won't have to touch it while you're washing your hands. And then I have the Dawn, the paper towel, the trash can nearby. And then also I do use the test strips, and like you said, you can buy them off of Amazon for about $15. And usually, as long as you stay in that purple shade, they're like glucose strips that people use if they're diabetic. And as long as they stay in like that purple shade, that's 50 to 100 million parts per million for the chlorine bleach, because I use shoe boxes. So,
Plastic
I only have to use like a real teeny tiny amount of bleach. If that's
So,
helpful for anybody.
Trisha, how many shoe boxes do you use?
I use 4. I have wash, rinse, sanitize, and then I have an extra one that I collect my dirties in.
Yep.
She
That's
is,
key.
I want to point that out, that she is part of the tribe, but she is also the only person that I have seen do that at the local farmer's market. I
That is
made note.
awesome.
I was like, look at that. When I first met her, I was like, okay. but no one else. No one
And
That
else.
it's
is,
also up under the igloo. I have a 5 gallon bucket that catch the nasty water.
there you go. You got to have wastewater retrieval.
Creativity.
That is awesome. And I got to commend you for that and, doing your due diligence, but also having, a lot of people don't realize they need, at minimum, they've got to have 3. You have to prove that you can wash, rinse, and sanitize. And for you to have that 4th one to collect the dirties in to begin with, that's awesome. That is Food Code 101. So good job. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Okay. We have Julia Harris. She has a question. She says, I'm growing in 100-gallon buckets. Should I be worried?
101-gallon buckets.
She just said 100-gallon bucket. But Julia, if you want to raise your hand, maybe you can ask a question verbally. Yes, she did. Let me allow it. Okay. Julia?
Okay, so I have my buckets lining the trail, and I grow in 100-gallon buckets, greens, everything. And I said, should I be worried about cross-contamination? I don't have no animals, no farm animals, any of that. I just plant and water. So is that a major concern with contamination or what? And I
No.
don't use manure and all that. So
No, it's not. There, you can basically you're growing in a raised bed if you think about it. Those
right.
blankets are your barrier of a raised bed. So no, as long as you're following, all the other required food safety standards, growing in a bucket, you shouldn't have any issues whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Julie, it'll be when you go to handle your produce. That's when the issue will come in. When you leave from your raised bed and going into your house.
Well,
So
y'all
you,
talking about the wind blowing,
oh,
all that.
I'm
Well,
gonna say this as a small farmer. No matter how educated and certified and how many years, we pick up some bad habits. So I am going to say from experience, don't get so comfortable with working your whole garden with the same gloves on all day. That
Oh,
so you will learn from experience, and it's a bad habit picking up, put your gloves on, you go out in the garden, you're just gonna work the garden. You go from your tomatoes, you go from your greens, you go from your onions, you go from here, you work the soil, you mulch. You are the contaminant. You don't have a risk of the contamination. It's you and your gloves. And so I'm gonna say, no matter how much you learn, you don't pick up bad habits. We should avoid going from plant to plant because we spread disease between our plants. And that has come from someone that has powdery mildew all the way 30 yards because just of a bad habit. Just me putting those gloves on, and this is the hour I'm working in the garden. I'm gonna stay in this little small space. And I went from one place to the next place. I pruned, I threw the leaves. I'm just moving. And then when I came back, I realized I made a very basic one-on-one mistake. So it was from me not washing my hands in between and going here and here.
A lot of people get lost in Food Code 101, glove changing. People will say, if I'm wearing gloves, how often should I change them? And it's basically the rule of thumb is when you move from one task to another, you should change your gloves.
oh.
If you apply that to gardening, if you go from one vegetable to the other, you should change your gloves. If you get a tear in it, you should change your gloves. So you want to apply the same premises of that to working in your garden.
And the cutting tools as well, right?
Yes. You know what's really cool? If you've never seen massive harvesting of iceberg lettuce. They have special knives for that. And some companies will actually provide the workers a special knife holder because they're picking that by hand. Romaine is picked by hand and iceberg lettuce is picked by hand. Now, the knife for iceberg lettuce is so specialized that the handle has a hole, a stainless steel circle that's probably about 1.5 inches in depth and maybe 1.5 inches in diameter as well. And they will pick that iceberg.
That's a great idea, Mark. Thank you.
They'll take the outer leaves off of it and they will pop that core out of there. And they will do that for 4 hours. And then their knives are replaced. They're cleaned and sanitized, wash, rinse, and sanitized, and they get a new one. And then it just cycles through that all day long. So wash, rinse, sanitize, air dry your tools, have another backup set if you can afford it, which a lot of people, working knives are not that expensive. As long as you can find a good deal and a good blade and a good handle, you probably shouldn't spend more than for, a pruning knife more than maybe $5, which you can get at a restaurant supply house for about $5 or Amazon.
All right. Well, I think we are close to that 5-minute mark. So we don't like to go over, but wow, so many great nuggets. I guarantee you everyone here heard something they never even knew to think about. At least that's how it worked for me. I was like, okay. So always be learning. That's why we really encourage for y'all just to keep showing up to these knowledge forums, because that's really what it's about. A couple things to note that's piggybacking onto this presentation is that we do plan to conduct food safety training, both in person and will for those who cannot make the in person. Once we decide on the date and location, we will do recorded or a hybrid one via Zoom as well. So stay tuned for that. Don't get too intimidated by what you heard several times from Terry, which is a plan. We will be providing some food safety plan templates that you really can customize to your farm or garden. Maybe something does apply or doesn't apply, so be it. So that will come with it. You don't have to try to, recreate the wheel. I think there's enough samples out there that we can work on. If there's something you need to add to the plan that's specific to your farm or your garden, so be it. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there. This was just really a high level meet Terry, so you guys can enjoy some of the nuggets that I've been receiving over the last 4 or 5 months, stuff that I've never even thought about it as a farmer and a gardener. So anyway, with that said, we will be ending this for today, but please continue to make it a habit of reviewing your weekly newsletter. Kind of stay in the know on some of the small farming insights and events and things like that are coming up. Feel free, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us at admin@tsfrcbo.org, or simply go to our website and go to the contact page and plug in your specific comments or questions. So that pretty much does it for tonight. Another special thanks to Terry Simmons, our special guest, and also to our team, those that you see on the screen and those who are behind the scenes. And most of all, special thanks to everyone who joined us tonight. Really, truly appreciate it. And until next time, remember, be the exception.